Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. I'm so glad you can join me here today. If you're new here, my name is Kumal. I'm a finance manager by day and a book reader by night. I love my books. I recently got into the habit of reading, and the whole point of this channel was for me to be able to share everything I've read. So in the spirit of that, for this video, I'd like to share my reading list. The books that I'm currently reading or going to read, and I want to show you why I want to read them and why I'm so excited to be able to read them. So this is my next month's reading list. There's about 6 books in there. So the way I read books is I sometimes read a physical book and I also listen to audiobooks. So I mix and match for both of them. So this is my physical set of books. I also have an audio set of books that I listen to while I'm walking or doing something else. Mostly while I'm walking, but also driving or for example, if I'm doing the dishes or doing something that doesn't require me to use my brain power, I could listen to an audiobook or a podcast, and that helps me a lot. So yeah, let's get into it. So out of the 6 books, let me start off with the first book here, which is Slow Productivity by Carl Newport. Now, Carl Newport is an author I highly admire, highly respect. I love his writing style. I've read a couple of his other books. I can show you the book that I've read. So there's one book called So Good They Can't Ignore You. In this book, Carl Newport talks about how we should never follow our passion. Instead, we should develop skills. This is talking about work. We should develop skills, and then eventually our passion will fall into place. Because when you're 18 and 19, your passion is raw. You don't really know what you're doing. So he's basically arguing for the thesis that we should explore our skill set, get rare and valuable skills, and then only after that can we say that we have passion and then follow the passion that we want to go to. So that's one book. The other book that I've read recently is Deep Work. Again, so Deep Work, in this book, he argues for the concept of what you could call flow, for example, where you are doing a task and you get so ingrained and engrossed in the task that everything else takes a backseat. And we should be having those moments, especially like in the mornings, for example, for myself, when I've got a big task to do. I would shut off everything else and then just engage in the deep work, because that's where the real benefit is. And then he talks about the things like shallow work that take you away from the deep work, and that's all about deep work. So anyway, Slow Productivity is a book that I'm also excited to read. It's his newest book. It was published this year, I believe, in 2024, and it's all about slowing down. So the reason why I picked this book up was because I was of the opposite mindset. For me, it was all about speeding up, because when you read books like Oliver Berkman's 4,000 Weeks, we only have 4,000 weeks to live. Or if you read other productivity books, for example, you realize that there's a lot to do and not enough time, right? And you want to be able to do as much as you can. But in this book, Carl is arguing for how we should just take a step back, just slow down and just focus on 1 or 2 tasks and then just do your best at them. It says the lost art of accomplishment without burnout. Let me look at the contents page. So I haven't read this book yet, but if you look at the contents page, he talks about his principles. So his principles are: do fewer things, work at a natural pace, obsess over quality, things like that, where you are focusing more over quality rather than quantity. And that's something I think is important for me, because I've always obsessed about doing a lot of things, but really life is not about doing a lot of things. It's about doing things, but in the best way possible, giving it your best. And I think that's a really important outlook to have. And I'm very excited to read this book. So this is one of my books that I'm going to be reading this month. The next book I'd like to talk about is this one here, Revenge of the Tipping Point, Malcolm Gladwell. Again, published this year, 2024. And this is a sequel to his previous book called The Tipping Point. If you've read The Tipping Point, then you'd know that it was a fantastic book where he talked about how ideas can spread like wildfire. So when an idea reaches the tipping point, it starts to spread. And that's what you call something called the stickiness factor, where ideas start to stick. And then he talks about the different kinds of people who make this possible. You have like the salesmen who love an idea and then they share it. You have the connectors who know a lot of people, and then they connect people. Then you have the I think it's called the basically the hoarders of knowledge, the people who have a lot of knowledge and they keep it within themselves, and they become like a subject matter expert on that knowledge or whatever it is. Let me read an excerpt for you from his book. So he says in his preface, in his introduction, he says, 25 years ago in The Tipping Point, I was fascinated by the idea that in social epidemics, little things could make a big difference. I came up with rules to describe the internal workings of social contagions, the law of the few, the power of context, the stickiness factor. The law of epidemics, I argued, could be used to promote positive change, lower crime rates, teach kids how to read, curb cigarette smoking. Look at the world around you, I wrote. It may seem like an immovable, implaceable place. It is not. While the slightest push in just the right place, it can be tipped. In The Revenge of the Tipping Point, I want to look at the underside of the possibilities I explored so long ago. If the world can be moved by just the slightest push, then the person who knows where and when to push has real power. So who are those people? What are their intentions? What techniques are they using? In the world of law enforcement, the word forensics refers to an investigation of the origins and the scope of a criminal act, reasons, culprit, and consequences. Revenge of the Tipping Point is an attempt to do a forensic investigation on social epidemics. So this book is going to be a classic book, and I am very excited to read this book because, again, like once you've read The Tipping Point, you know the ideas that he's promoting, and now he's trying to explore the people who make the tipping point possible, because essentially you want to learn about them and know about them, and also maybe be cautious about them, because if it is in the wrong place in the wrong time, or the wrong person, then we'll have a problem. And we can see everything that's happening around in the world is because the people who are at the tipping point, who can make the change, are not good people. So yeah, very excited to read this book, and I look forward to reading that book. Okay, the next one, again by Carl Newport, Digital Minimalism. So this is something that I struggle with a lot. This is the whole concept of social media and how it takes us away from essentially our purpose in life. And the whole point is he wants us to detach ourselves from social media, to come out of it. If you look at the contents page, for example, he talks about some practices that are useful. He says, spend time alone, don't click like, reclaim leisure. And the whole point of this book is basically we need to stop, obsessing and spending so much time on social media that we lose focus on what's important, what's really out there that we should be doing. And that I think is an important lesson for myself, because I need to start disengaging myself from social media, and focusing more on the things that are important to me. So yeah, very excited to read this book, and hopefully I can learn some lessons from it. Right, the next one, How to Develop Self-Confidence and Influence People by Public Speaking, Dale Carnegie. So a classic book. He's got another book called How to Win Friends and Influence People, which I've read before. Very classic. This book will possibly a classic Dale Carnegie style of writing, where because he taught these topics and these subjects, I think he'll be the subject matter expert, and I'm looking forward to, because I do want to develop my confidence, and I do want to be able to talk better and talk well in public, and hopefully this book will give me some insight on how I can do that, and just become a better speaker all around. And I think he'll give examples on famous people who actually spoke in public and maybe use that as leverage. And he talks about how to open a talk, how to close a talk, how to make your meaning clear. So a lot of important stuff and useful stuff in this book, and I look forward to jumping in, and learning from it. All right, the next one, Warrior, Magician, Lover, King, Rob Boothroyd. So this is all about the male archetypes. So there are 4 archetypes: the warrior, the magician, the lover, and the king. And this book is written specifically for the 21st century. So I have I have the original version that was written about 20 years ago. Um, that where because it was written 20 years ago, this author then decided to apply this book, Lover, Magician, King, and Warrior, in the present context. So the whole point of this book is we have these archetypes within us, and as a balanced human being, you have to have all four archetypes in balance. The warrior is the fire in you, the one who wants to go out and make change, who defines the boundaries, who makes sure you get things done. The magician is a person who's a deep thinker. He thinks about things. He has insight into things. The lover is obviously the person who shows love and who shows appreciation to everyone around him, and to themselves. And the king is a sovereign who's in charge of all of. Basically the king is the one in charge that keeps all the other three archetypes in focus, and make sure that they're disciplined enough to do what they need to do, and make me as a disciplined person. So I think that would be a useful book to venture into, and it's something that I think I would definitely enjoy. I think I do actually have the book. Yes, so this one here, The King, Warrior, Magician, Lover, by Robert Moore and Douglas Gillett. So this is the original book written. It was published. Let me have a look. So it was published in. Let's see. Let me see if I can see it. In 1990. Wow. 1990. So a long time ago, over 20 years ago. And so obviously there are concepts in here that might not apply for the 21st century, and this book here is basically rewritten for the 21st century, a guide to the male archetypes updated for the 21st century. So hopefully it will give me some insights on what it means to be a real man. It talks about the shadow archetypes as well. So all of us have shadow archetypes that we need to work on. So for example, the shadow archetype of anger is when you lose focus of your anger and it becomes too much, and you start lashing out at people that you shouldn't be lashing out at. Or for example, the lover that goes extreme. And the whole point is you want to get balance on these archetypes, and I think I want to get my archetypes in balance. So yeah, so this is the book. All right, and the last one. So this is a bit of a niche one, but it's something that I'm interested in, and something that I'm basically going to be reading. I've started reading a few of his other books as well. So this is Ghazali, on the remembrance of death and the afterlife. Now, Ghazali was a 12th century philosopher / theologian. You might not call him a philosopher because he wrote a book called Incoherence of the Philosophers, where he argues against the philosophers. In fact, I do have the book somewhere. Yes, I do. So there you go. So that's Incoherence of the Philosophers, where he basically picks up some ideas of the philosophers, especially philosophers like Avicenna, and he picks, basically he shows how they are mistaken in what they are saying. Which is a useful. It's not really a book I would read from cover to cover because it's very intense, but it's something that you can reference. But this book is all about death and remembrance of death, and I think that's something in the 21st century we've forgotten. We've just kept death on the back burner because death is something that's morbid, something that we don't really talk about, because unless it happens to you, we just keep away, because then it just puts a down on everything. It just becomes a really bad situation where you just become a morbid person, and so we shy away from talking about death. But really, death is not something that we should shy away from. Number one, it's guaranteed. So you shying away from it doesn't make it go away. It's still going to come to yourself and to everyone around you, for sure. There's no guarantee about it. There's definitely guarantee about it. There's no two ways about it. But secondly, surely if you remember death and the afterlife, if you believe in the afterlife, then you basically focus on what's important. So looking at your goals, for example, when I was reading about slow productivity, the first book I was talking about, right? So given that this is going to happen, then I want to make sure that whatever I do in this world, given that I have a finite amount of time, I want to do it in the best way possible, right? So I will make sure that I do the best I can, because if I don't, death is going to come to me, right? And that's the whole point of this book. So he wrote a whole treatise called, it's in Arabic. In Arabic, it's called Ihya Ulum ad-Din, the revival of the the sciences, particularly Islamic sciences, because he was a Muslim, and he wanted to, he thought the religion was dead, and he wanted to revive the religion, to basically bring its spirit back to life. And one of the things, one of the books he wrote on that is this Remembrance of Death and the Afterlife. I have some of his other books, which it's all part of the Ihya, the revival of the sciences. This book is on disciplining the soul and breaking of the two desires, the desire of lust and desire of gluttony. So he goes into in depth on how we can break these desires and discipline our souls and ourselves to make sure we don't go towards extremes. And the other book, which I haven't read yet, but eventually I'll be reading that, it's on the 99 Beautiful Names of God. Again, this is from an Islamic perspective, and something that I'm interested in. So yeah, this is another book that I'm going to venture into at some point in time. But for this month, for the coming month, this is the book I'll be reading, because I think it's important for all of us to have remembrance of death, and just to make sure that we don't lose focus and don't lose sight of the bigger picture, right? And I think death is also important because when things go wrong and life is hard, you put everything into context by remembering death. And I think this book will hopefully provide me that framework and that worldview to make sure that I don't lose focus on the bigger picture. So that's it. The books that I'm going to be reading in the next month, hopefully. I'll try and read all of them. If not, it will seep into the month after. But yeah, it's I'm excited to venture into these books. If you have any book recommendations, anything that you think is useful that I'd find interesting, please do let me know in the comments. And if not, until then, see you soon.